Ron, fantastic to have you here. Really excited to get involved in this conversation and go through everything UFO related, and of course discuss your new book. So yeah, look, just to kind of get us kickstarted, I'm going to go through the usual rigmarole and just ask you to give a little overview about your background and just kind of, I guess, what got you into the UFO topic as well, if that's okay.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm Ronnie, or Ron, or Ronald, as my grandfather always called me Ronald. Everyone else calls me Ronnie, but he called me Ronald. I'm an identical twin brother. I'm 55 years old. We're going on to 56. I have a passion for science fiction, which goes against you with this topic. It goes against you, even as a kid, which is
Yeah,
quite nasty, actually.
yeah.
I'm also an artist. I love art. I've recently delved into 3D art, which is the printers to create my monsters and my robots. So I'm moving more into the science fiction than the UFOs. I'm sliding back into what I really did prefer. You know, I'll make no bones of it. I didn't want to get involved with the UFO subject. It sounds good, I know. It sounds wonderful, doesn't it? But truth be known, it's what I've seen, and I thought I couldn't hold back. And so it's a number of sightings I've had that spearheaded me actually writing these books and getting in touch with the wonderful Philip Mantle years ago and becoming friends with him. So a lot of us are friends with him. He's a good old boy, bless him. He
Mhm.
wouldn't mind me saying that. But
Yeah.
yeah, and I've seen these strange things, and it's completely confounded me. Trying to find out what exactly it is we're dealing with. I just
Yeah.
don't know, but it's good to draw some parallels with it. And my goodness, have I come up with some parallels?
Yeah, no, exactly. And I'm sure we're going to delve into that. Just for context, then, because obviously I'm aware of some of the stuff, but what has been your kind of your first experience that you had UFO related?
Mm. It is the 1982 incident that happened in a summer of 1982, in the summer. I can't tell you what day it was because I was only 13. I didn't keep a diary. These things were very unusual. There was something that happened prior to that, but I'm not going to go into that. But this was the thing. Basically, it was with our grandmother. They lived in Tashwick Road, quite a nice sized house, actually, 3 stories, quite big. Um, Down that road, and we used to stay with them during the summer holidays. And it was an incident where Philip and I were alone with Grandma, and I can't remember if she was hanging out the washing or what that day. But this silver orb approached from the rear of the garden, and it sped up towards us. Now, the first impression was it was a balloon. You would automatically think it was. It's a just a hot air balloon or a child's, full of helium. It wasn't, because as it approached, it was kind of solid, very
Mm.
solid. It was the size of a football. It was level with the second bedroom window. That's the height of it. And it approached and stopped right over our grandmother's head. And I had a good look at it, a very good look at this thing. It was what we would call, I wouldn't know then what it was, but it looked like it was made of titanium or chrome or something. There was no cord. There was no knot in it. It was perfectly spherical, and it just hung there. It appeared soiled, but that would be attributed to the reflection of the world about it.
Hmm.
And it didn't make any sound. There was no noise, and it just hung there. And I got the distinct impression then that we were being watched,
Mm.
and it was watching us. So I refer to it as an electronic eye now, some kind of camera. I can't be sure. But then what it did was it then shot up,
Mm.
controlled. It just went right up to the tip of the roof and then went over. Well, we raced into the house, the opposite end, to see if we could see it moving, and we did. And it passed the little street they've got. There's a little stream. They live right by a little stream, but they were right by a bridge, a little bridge and a stream. It's only a little stream. And it just went shot off. Now, that certainly was something from Doctor Who. It would appear
Mm.
that it was something very strange. How I felt at the time of Philip, awed. We weren't frightened more so than we were awed, but it was haunting. And it was something you never really spoke about, because at that night, Grandma was talking to people on the telephone. I believe she was telling them about it because we were eavesdropping up on the top before bed, but nothing more was said. It was very strange. And I've always wondered, and people will state, it was atmospheric distortion. What you saw was, you're confused. It was a balloon. It wasn't. If you
Mm.
were there at the time, you would know it was very bizarre. And only later on did I find out that these Foo Fighters, not the group, of course, but the UFOs that were dogged the aircrafts of the Second World War,
Yeah.
during the war, they were reported. Well, it would be something like them, but it wasn't a glow. It wasn't lit up. These things, I believe, were lit up, or they glowed. Hence, they were easily seen, but no one knew what they were. But they weren't human, that's for sure. Of course, the Germans thought it was a new weapon we'd
Yeah.
created. We thought it was a new weapon they'd created. That's the initial thing that got me into the UFOs. Much later, not then.
Yeah. Right. Interesting. And did it move? I mean, you said it shot over. Did it move pretty fast, or did it
No.
just move kind of unnatural in
No,
that way? Like, yeah, like
it sped off.
Sped off.
Yeah.
What did your grandma say about it?
When it was above her head, we were pointing at it and we said, "Grandma, look, it was just right over her head." And she said the most bizarre thing. She said, "Oh, look, the fairies have come to take a closer look at us," or something to that effect.
Yeah.
Now, I knew afterwards that perhaps she was trying to belay any fear we had of it.
Mm.
And I then wondered many years later whether she'd seen these things before, because she was absolutely,
Fine with
completely
it. Really?
blasé. And she was psychic. We didn't know even then.
Oh, I see.
She was psychic. She was psychic, yes. So it's very, very strange. And I can't tell you what that was to this day, but they're reported throughout. I've noticed recently the reports of them always, of these orbs, these silver orbs. God knows what they are. But I put it down to the distinctive feeling of being watched. I did feel it was watching us.
Mm.
There was no harm that came from it. Nothing. Just awe, I think.
Yeah, interesting. Well, there is a connection, and I know the story around your brother as well, and his abilities, and kind of both of your experiences, what happened as well. There is a connection seemingly with the psychic phenomena and the UFO phenomena itself. Who knows what that connecting thread is? But the fact your grandma had these abilities as well, and your brother has those abilities as well, you both have a connections to it. And I've been speaking to various people, and my family, we're Romani Gypsy background, Hungarian. I'm half English, Irish, and some other random stuff in there.
Mm-hmm.
But I've done a DNA test. I'm 1% Nigerian. I said to my mum, I was like, "Is there something you're not telling me?" That what it was,
quite a mixed bag, isn't it?
yeah, exactly. But I've got a couple of, I've got a medium in my family, a psychic, even one of my uncles, and a lot of us are kind of intuitive in that way as well. So for me, there's always been a connection between the particular phenomena and these abilities itself. So that might be something to look at as well. So interesting. Okay, and then just to kind of fast forward now, you've had some other experiences itself, and this kind of led you to write this book. Was there, I mean, what I will do, if you don't mind, is I will, before I go and get you to answer that, I'll read the kind of backstory of your book, just so people can get familiar with kind of what the book's about, really. I mean, obviously everyone, the link will be in the description. Check it out. It's on Amazon and all that stuff, and you can get it from Flying Disc website as well, I believe, Philip Mantle's website as well. So I'll leave all the link and all the information in the description, but I'm just going to read it out. I'm not in no epic Lord of the Rings voice. I'm just going to read it. In this book, Ronald Kinsella questions the number of UFO, alien, and cryptid reports, which range from unusual to the very bizarre throughout the world. This interrogation is not based on their authenticity, rather questioning a much darker aspect to their origins and of a seemingly fragmented phenomena. Is it just possible we have been duped by something else, something far more sinister? Is it all feasible to suggest that many of the ghosts, cryptids, and alien encounters reported by hundreds of thousands of people throughout time have been manifested by a force that is as cunning as it is ingenious? Has it also employed its tactics through the likes of scouring C5 initiatives, along with Ouija board and his Skinwalker Ranch, a hotspot to paranormal activity being used as its playground, knowing that interest of it has certainly arisen? Are we looking at a thing which is as bizarre as the very cosmos itself, and of which understands us, our history, to the point of disbelief? Ronald attests that these are merely ideas, and that the reasons concluded certainly do sway strongly towards a sinister and calculated addition to planet Earth. he wagers that his own encounters, perhaps like many, have been instigated by a clever trickster, and of which selects people for a reason he contemplates within the very pages of this book. So, just to set the tone and stuff, it's very intriguing, all the things and the questions you ask in there as well. So, what I mean, you said before that particular experience didn't kind of put you in that space where you were scared and worried. What brought this upon you then to write this book?
Yeah, well, looking at cases, certainly past cases of the 1950s, certainly the 1950s, this was quite prevalent with alleged abductees. The first thing that got me curious was the fact that there were such an enormous range of aliens. They seem to change faces as swiftly as we have hot dinners, no pun intended. And a thought occurred to me that the Greys now, the most popular alien in commercial in the commercial world, and also being reported, is these embryonic-looking Greys. And I felt, or thinking about this, I realized that they weren't really set in stone. The aliens weren't set in stone. These certainly weren't until Whitley Strieber published his book Communion. It wasn't Close Encounters of the Third Kind movie that spearheaded this. It was his book, the picture on his cover. And I'm not denouncing or stating that they are not of a species. There might well be a number of them, but something else as well, I think, something that perhaps can imitate them, and is using this in a way to gain something from us. What that thing is, we don't know. I'll give an example as well. What's also interesting, based on the aliens now being more or less set in stone, because more than not, it is the Greys or the reptilians, but the Greys more so, is the fact I also discovered in the 1950s that when the contactees met them, in effect, the spaceships, when they arrived, landed more than not conventionally. They landed conventionally. They've got the landing gears and that, the door opening, you know. After Star Trek, or when that appeared, I made this known at the Awakening Conference. The idea was conceived of being beamed up. And so after that, thereafter, we had people being transported into the spaceships by an exotic means. And certainly one that we have elaborated on, or Gene Roddenberry, his wonderful Star Trek, and things like that. And also another thing was the fact, you'll notice that in the 50s, there were a lot of B movies, flying saucers, you know, invading the Earth and all that, and the spaceman wore silver. Well, you will find from a lot of the accounts that the ships were silver, and the aliens did wear this chrome material, and it seemed to change as our tastes changed. I'm not saying all, but this is quite prevalent. It has to be noted. We have to question it. And they seem to change. And to me, that appeared suspicious in the fact that, is something watching us? Or are we being duped by something, you know, that is quite extraordinary, very, very different from what being led to believe. You know, this opened up questions, more questions for me than answers, because you have to question. I've had people attacking me for stating that and saying I'm delusional, you know, but I'm not.
Yeah.
The one thing I'm not tunnel visioned. I will consider every aspect. And as you said, there might well be good ones. The Greys, there might be a good faction of them. I'm not stating that they are ethereal, as this force is creating them or manifesting them, because they are physical. And then we look not only at them, then we can then branch out to the cryptids, the Bigfoot, the werewolf, the fairies, and it goes on and on and on. Are we being duped by something that is able to manifest these things quite conveniently and at will? And one interesting aspect of this also I discovered, and I can't remember if I actually published it in Illusions, the fact that I thought about this AI art we now have. It's very clever. I've used it. I've tried it. I won't use it for mere means, because there's no point.
Yeah,
Machines can do it. What good would it be to an artist? You just,
precisely.
there'd be no effort being made to create a masterpiece, although
Hmm.
they are very clever. One thing it cannot do, someone corrected me on this, but they were wrong. One thing this thing cannot do at the moment, it cannot reproduce the same image twice, the same character.
Oh,
They'll
okay.
be similar, they will be very similar, but it cannot recreate them again in that exact copy. Now, this thing, what we're dealing with, seems to follow the same traits as that, because it can't seem to uphold an original copy. You'll notice that if you read all the reviews of the Greys, they alter in appearance.
Hmm.
So they have dolphin skin, they have wrinkled skin, they have smooth skin. I've had no end of cases reported of how different they are. And the same can be applied to the werewolf and Bigfoot. They all differ. Paul Sinclair, the wonderful researcher of Bempton, best-selling author of Truth Proof series, he mentioned that one werewolf was wearing an earring. It's as if whatever this is cannot uphold consistency. It
Yeah.
lacks a degree of imagination, but it needs something to fuel it. It's only a hypothesis, of course, and I'm not referring to everything being of that, because there may well be the genuine ones. Certainly, Betty and Barney Hill, the case of 1961, I believe it was, when her Kathleen Marden's auntie and uncle were abducted by aliens. I think that's genuine. But is something watching or copying? Are these things becoming in vogue? And if so, why?
Yeah. No, it's interesting. I think the idea of them changing their view or perspectives based on what we're expecting or what the kind of social ongoing or the zeitgeist of the time, that's been apparent. I mean, as you said before, the old UFO craft, they used to be quite I guess rugged, like the little landing tools and that sort of stuff. And then
Yeah.
as we've evolved and we now have faster planes, which are more streamlined, more futuristic, the actual UFO appearances themselves have also kind of adapted to that perspective as well. And as
Yeah.
you said as well, I mean, I never really thought of it that way, to be fair. The whole phenomena and these beings, the way they change, they have so many different outfits, I guess I'm doing quotations, because and they struggle to contain consistency, and then you put it down to a lack of imagination. And it's just occurring to me now, maybe there's been a lot of talk about how they're interested in the human psyche, the way we think, and maybe the imagination part of it could be something that they're intrigued about. Do you have any theories on kind of the motivations or around why they would be doing this?
I do, yes. The point of this is that it is certainly, and you stated it yourself, Laszlo, you're correct, is based on a psychic level.
Hmm.
There is a connection from the cradle to the grave. Somehow we are connected. The Ouija board I used many years ago, 25 years ago, I used it and tested it first, because I don't want any nonsense. It sounds ridiculous coming on a program to talk about UFOs, but we're trying to understand. We don't know what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
Right. So I used the Ouija board 25 years ago. It was a crude effort because we didn't have one. So we stuck letters around a table, and we had a planchette, a glass, a highball as the planchette. And every time we moved it, the letters kept falling off. But we got it, and something came through. Now, I didn't trust this thing. It was coming out with a load of old cobblers. But when I said, I can't have this. We need some proof. So a friend of ours, Susan, she was with us, and Philip and I had control of the board, and we said, look, get a bit of paper and a pencil and write something down, go out, write it down and put it in your pocket, come back in. Well, she knew what we were doing, so she did. She came back in and said, right, I said to the board, I didn't realize how absolutely, what's the word I could use, obstinate I appeared, but I asked it, what has she written on that piece of paper? And it spelt trickery. I
Really?
said, yep, it's spelled trickery. I said, no, if you were in our position, you would understand. I want to know what she's written on that piece of paper. And it's spelt it out, Darthmaul. Well, at the time, the wonderful George Lucas had bought out a Star Wars film with Darth Maul in. I thought, Darth Maul, the tattooed man.
Yeah, yeah,
Darth,
yeah.
Darth Maul?
Maybe him. Yeah.
She pulled out the piece of paper and held it up. It was Darth Maul.
Wow.
And
That's
then it's spelt satisfied. Now, I was unnerved by that. People will say that's coincidental. It wasn't. It wasn't.
not
No,
coincidental.
no,
No.
that could have been anything on that piece of paper. And so I stupidly realized that perhaps it had read it using like we do. You know, it's basic thinking. But what it had done, it had entered her mind and plucked those words out.
Hmm.
So this is the same thing or something similar. And again, I'm not reiterating or knocking anyone who deals with that to talk to the dead. I do believe that our own people come through from another dimension, heaven, what we call it. Some we give it words, but I do believe we survive death. All right. So there might be people who can contact them. That's fair enough. But there's something else. This had the feeling, the vibes of something quite nasty. And that's I trust my instincts. It was quite cocky and nasty. And so, is it possible, or at all possible, that this is the same thing as the Greys that can walk through walls or appear at the foot of a bed with the dead relatives, bringing them on board? I've heard this. Is it the same thing? And for the purpose of what? Well, the only thing I could come up with that is that you'll notice in illusions, I've covered a lot of ground. I've done the cryptids as well, the werewolves.
Mm-hmm.
One of the chapters in there is called "Who's Afraid of the Big Bad Wolf?" I was very honoured to have Martin Grove's account in there. He was a deputy sheriff. And him and his mate, I think 30 odd years ago, they went to the land between the lakes, turkey hunting. And he was a police officer, for God's sake, respected.
Mm.
They saw one of them. They were
Mm.
in the middle of nowhere. They were armed. Of course, they would be going turkey hunting, but they were officers. They were armed and they saw, well, a number of them actually. And he was horrified. It was right. It came right up to him. It was grinning at him. This thing was grinning at him. And so that account illustrates some basis of Bigfoot, of the fairies that have been reported, of witches, of the aliens as we call them, and so on and so on. There's no pattern to it, but do you see they couldn't have, let's say, based on the encounters, if this was so, they couldn't have a Dalek appearing into your room to frighten you at the dead of night. That just wouldn't make any sense.
Yeah.
It's well, they couldn't have, Lord Voldemort,
Both will scare me.
yeah,
Yeah.
with his wand ready to incinerate you. It's always something just on the fringe of reality, something that's merged into our folklore. I'm not the first to say that. People have said that before. The folklore.
Yeah.
And these ideas I've come up with only seem to strengthen a hypothesis that it might just be possible there is, as referred to, a trickster at play here for the purpose of what? Well, the only thing I can think of is fear.
Mm.
And what's really strange about this is that I think the best-selling author himself conceived this idea many years ago. Everyone knows who he is, Stephen King.
Mm.
He wrote a book called It. And the original miniseries that I watched, I loved it. I won't. I'm not really into the new ones. I think that perhaps the younger people like it. That's fair enough. But I prefer the 10-hour the long mini series, whatever it was. But in that, this thing came from the multiverse,
Mm-hmm.
and it appeared as their worst nightmares, their fears, and it always cornered them when they're more or less alone or not. It's similar.
Mm.
It's really bizarre, isn't it? I mean, I might be barking up the wrong tree and getting it
No,
all wrong.
no, I get what you're saying, right? There's definitely a negative aspect
Yes.
to this as well. They do say the Ouija board can bring in dark forces in general, but the one thing, because I said to you before this call as well, we started, I was like, I believe there's good and bad in pretty much all of it, and there is, and I wanted to kind of touch on that as well. But before we go through that, I think the thing for me that is curious and makes me question it is the trickster stuff, and that is true. You don't really get the full scope of what they're doing, why they're doing it. They kind of just, these experiences, they play games, or you see snippets of the information or the experience. They kind of get close and then they go away. I spoke to quite a few people, but Grant Cameron in particular, if you know him, his idea around it was that they do this to spark curiosity, and he was speaking it from a positive side. Curiosity then puts you on this road when you're figuring out what the hell was that and why is it happening, it makes you question reality itself. And then it puts you on that path when you're trying to figure that out. And the biggest thing that can happen, and this is where I'm at in the middle of it really, is that you can really lose your shit from these experiences if you don't get an answer. But you can't get an answer. And I believe people who say they've got the full answers, and I'm not talking about the whistleblowers and all these people who are trying to get disclosure and all that stuff. I'm talking about the people who be like, these beings, I speak to them or they come down, I know what they want. That type of stuff, I'm always a bit skeptical over, because I don't think they would, I just don't see how they would be able to have full connection with these individuals, bearing in mind what they're doing. But it's the trickster stuff, and that is prevalent throughout the whole phenomena, the teasing of the information and kind of pushing you down the thing. The motivations of it, who knows? But if they were sparking fear, then that just means they're just ultimately bad forces, pretty much full stop. Can you see any, because I'm sure through your research and stuff like that, you may have come across some positive things as well. Do you have an angle on kind of the positive aspects of it, if there was such a thing, and why there will be a conflicting thing? The same way we have good and bad people, could there be also good and bad within this particular thing as well? But the trickster stuff and these particular forces, they come in and they seem to be more evident, especially when we don't get the full information, and they can drive people up the wall because I don't know what they've just saw or experienced. And the abduction cases, there's a lot to it actually in there.
Yeah, I would hope that there are good forces out there.
Yeah.
Certainly the Greys, it would be nice to know. But you see, the trouble is that we're confounded all the time. In the 1950s, their message to the people, more than not, or that was strongest at heart, was their concern for atomic warfare.
Yeah.
Their concern. Now, this is a contradiction, a total contradiction. If this is true and they were concerned over atomic warfare, now nuclear, they would have, why would they abduct just anyone and voice their concerns? We know they can't land on the lawns of the White House because, respectfully put, the governments would want something from them, and they're not going to do that. They're not going to stop nuclear warfare, or that, because the whole point is they built them for that purpose. They call it a deterrent, but they could use them. So these aliens in the 50s were preaching about their concerns. Well, they could have done it themselves. They could have swiftly gone over the earth or whatever they need to do if they're so concerned, and neutralize them. We build more, they do the same. We build more, we can't do it. They've won. They don't have to voice their concerns anymore. And people say that would be a contradiction in terms of, them not getting involved. But they're already doing that because they're here. They're voicing their concerns. It doesn't make any sense at all. So people say they have done it. Yes, perhaps one or two. They've shut a few down temporarily, but they're always got to come back up. So they haven't done it. And then you'll notice from the nuclear threat to the 90s, which was very popular with the Greys, their new concern was the environmental issues. They were concerned over the environment. And again, they did absolutely nothing. It's as if we're made to look this way and that way. And, I've seen no end of documentaries of people stating that the Greys, let's take them for an example, to show them the destruction of the earth, and, there's nothing but danger to come. For the purpose of what? Why? It doesn't make sense. I agree with you. But in answer to the good ones, well, I've seen no evidence of that myself personally through my own experiences. I have seen nothing of that at all. I mean, are they weaker than this force that is emanating these messages of doom and destruction? And then we have the problem of those that state that the aliens are showing them the goodness. Well, that might be so, but they've done nothing. There's nothing. We've got nothing to show for it. The Federation. All right, I'll give you an example. The Federation, they're going to look after the earth. They're here, the peace of mankind. We've seen absolutely nothing. It's all hearsay. Even my testimony is hearsay. I have no proof. And this is a nasty thing about it. They leave nothing. They take everything. So what ultimately are we dealing with? Yes, it could be that we might be looking at this from a completely different perspective, as you stated. We might be misinterpreting their interactions as being negative. I remember an actual chap said to me, the reason why you've had negative encounters with these things It's because you're negative yourself. I was anything but when I was 13. I'm not
Yeah, yeah,
negative now. I'm not negative at all. I'm one of the most open-minded people. I don't hate anyone or anything. I'll be sore about certain things, but certainly nothing to do with, you know, creating this kind of ethereal, backlash. No, I don't know. But it would seem that every time these aliens suggest something to these abductees, and for example, the hybridization program that we've heard so much
yeah,
about, for the purpose of what? They're telling you these things, but how can they be trusted
yeah,
in what they're
yeah.
stating? And you have such a diverse range of, narratives that it's very hard to try and pick which one is actually accurate because we just don't know. They're as ethereal as their advice.
Yeah, no, there's it's a bit like the internet. There's too much information. You have to kind of, well, you can't really. This is why, as you said, it's best to just have an open mind, and then stuff comes to you, and then you kind of just, okay,
Mm.
could be, maybe it's a theory. We don't know for sure because if you get focused on it as well, you're not going to get an answer from it as well, which I think is one of the biggest frustrating things with it. I think, and I just want to talk about as well the CE5 stuff. The reason I'm talking about it is because, Stephen Greer, he, when I first got into the UFO thing years ago, I used to watch a bit of his stuff, and then I stopped watching his stuff as well. And he came to London actually last weekend for the first time ever doing his thing, and I was like, I don't watch his stuff. I don't particularly believe. I think he done some good stuff before, but looking at the way he's gone now, I think it's kind of lost the way, in my opinion. Anyway, I wanted to go see for it for myself before I make any judgments. And his whole thing around it, a big part of it was around we're making the alien beings. He cried a couple of times, which I felt a bit awkward personally. I don't know why I didn't. Maybe it was my own things. But what was crucial about it as well, a large segment of it is that they're positive and they're here to save us. The way to connect with them is through meditation, through love. And it's conflicting because I've seen, or I've not seen, but I've seen lots of reports of people focusing on this experience and doing this CE5 and them having accounts and having positive experience. But then I've also seen and heard loads of negative experience. And just to touch on your point as well, you said about you feeling more negative attracts that. I can attest to that personally because during my mid-20s, when I was completely lost, I was in a weird space. I was extremely negative, pissed off at the world. And that was probably one of my most peakest times of having negative. I wasn't scared of it ever, by the way. I was like, come on then, what are you going to do? But I used to have a lot of very like strange, scary type experiences. So maybe they're attached to that as well. But the positive side of it as well, there's a conflict between it. So maybe it is two opposing forces come into it as well. But then once again, if we can't do nothing with that information and if we keep getting teased with it, it can be a form of manipulation in that way, which isn't good for human. Maybe it's okay for them and their morals, the way they behave. They may think it's okay, but for us and the people that go through those experiences, it can definitely occur as negative and dark. So that's why I understand what you're saying from that perspective as well.
Yes, yes, I've heard of Dr. Greer. Yes, I just leave that. I don't go down that road. No disrespect to him. I don't wish any ill on him, but
Yeah,
I just don't. I don't conform to that at all.
yeah, mhm,
I do believe, though, that there is this interesting aspect of the CA5 initiative. I believe it can be done because be careful what you wish for. Now, is this the very same thing that we are seeing before us, like the Greys, people wishing to see them? There are rituals that people follow. There was a count of a reptilian I remember seeing through the thought of the mind and belief. See, a psychic connection, psychic connection. I'm not saying all, and I'm not going to step on any toes to state that they're not real. There might well be some factions that are. This psychic ability of actually what they were doing was, as a ritual, they were in a circle performing some kind of ceremony, and this demon or this reptilian appeared before them. Now, there was a tycoon up staying with his family in the same park, national park, I believe it was, and he saw this thing. He was horrified, and he was Christian. He's religious, and it came up to him within the whip of an eye, blink of an eye. It came up, and it was interested in the women, but the demon or this reptilian stated telepathically, "Now I'm not going to hurt you." Basically, in so many words, but you didn't see me. You're not going to report. Very, very interesting. And you go on to many different cases. It's fascinating because what they were doing were whipping something up, and obviously they didn't appear to be surprised at all at seeing this thing conjured from the depths of the earth, appearing before them. So if it is to be believed, of course. But I do believe this. He won't give his name because, of course, understandably, he's a hotel mogul, he's a multimillionaire, he's a Christian. That just like my science fiction, it goes against you.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I think we are all connected. All of us by mind. Our brainwaves are rather like the internet. There's a network of us all connected. You will notice, and I've noticed this as well, when you come up with a new idea, say you want to think of something new, later on you'll see that someone else has come up with that as well. It's like we are, I believe, interlinked. So is it possible that we are hooked up to something else, that something else has not, I wouldn't say commandeered it, but it's part of us, so we have no understanding of what it is, from the cradle to the grave? Is it like an obstinate, intelligent child from another dimension that is learning? We don't know. It can manifest into these things, but it doesn't understand exactly how to do it.
Yeah.
We have to consider every manner of this, but certainly it is dangerous when people preach their narratives to you, stating that they're of peace and they're good. We don't know that. Hell, we don't even know what we're dealing with. We do not know what we're dealing with. We call them alien, but are they? Are they? We can't be sure. And also, what's interesting, the congressional hearing to unlock certain secrets, which I don't believe will ever happen. We're never going to have disclosure. But based on this, if this is to be believed, the knowledge that these men know about them, they refer to them as non-human. They didn't call them alien. We have to listen to what they're stating. Non-human. Now, that sounds a little bit closer to Earth for comfort. Non-human, although it's not, but somewhere interdimensional, rather than being alien from outer space. The acronym has been changed and there's a reason for it. This is interesting.
What do you think the reason is then? Do you think it's because they know what they have a closer inspection of what this phenomena is, and they think it's more based around here and they're not from other planets and whatever?
Yeah, Georgina Bruni wrote a book called You Can't Tell the People. Now, sadly, she's gone. She's passed, very sadly. But she stated that she went, I think it was her who asked the Premier, Margaret Thatcher, at the time, she got a moment to ask about UFOs. And Margaret Thatcher answered very, very interestingly. She said, firstly, you need to get your facts right. Well, she knew no one could. And when you do, you'll know that's why we can't tell the people. Now, does that sound good to you?
No.
Okay, the vibes there, the vibes of them in the congressional hearing, or if this is to be believed, I do believe that there were a number of crashed ships from the past. Roswell, I certainly believe. The reason why I believe that is because the military actually announced they had in possession a flying disc, and they quickly changed the narrative to a weather balloon. Because they realized in all fairness to them, I don't think this had happened on such a scale like this, and they weren't quite sure how to approach it with the military. But then the commanding officers had the sense to state, to our annoyance, you don't tell them. This is like the crown jewels. It's unique. Anything unique on Earth is valuable. So I do believe that the crash happened, something exotic crash. I'm not going to go down the autopsy. We're not going to I don't go down that road, but something they did retrieve something or collect something very valuable or quite different. Again, it's all hushed up, as you stated, Laszlo. You've said it's always hushed up. Now, why? Is it because it's a wonderful thing and they're frightened of letting out the bag? I don't think so. I don't think so. From all the sources, certainly I have investigated, it's always negative. And I'm not negative, perhaps people can perhaps comfortably state that I'm looking more into the negative aspect of it rather than them looking into the positive. And there must surely be some positive with this. There must surely. There's
Must be.
yin
Yeah.
and yang. I mean, there's another point we must raise now. If they wanted to take over the world, they could have done it quite easily. They could create a germ that would be absolute 1 billion% foolproof. They would kill us off straight away.
Mhm.
They haven't. So the intention is there's no going to be no invasion at all. That then we could argue the case, is that because of limited number? Are there a faction of them doing this? We don't know. So I do believe that the military and the governments, those higher, because governmental politicians, they only stay in the arena for so many years. These will be people higher than the government
Yeah.
and higher than the president. These are institutions. These are aerospace corporations. And they know a little bit more. They will know. I think they're wiser to this. And I don't think it's quite pleasant, to be honest with you, because why would you covet? Why would you cover? Conceal everything? Is it because let's just suggest that it's offering them this higher form of technology and they want it all for themselves? I don't think so. I
You
don't
couldn't
think
unlock it anyway, I don't
no,
think. It'd be
no.
like giving a phone to a Victorian. I think there's two.
That's what I stated in the book. Yes.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things. So I think, yeah, I mean they've kept it closed. I think also there's a couple of reasons for that. So it could be down to the fact that they've continually um lied, committed crimes of heinous acts, and they've shed this out to kind of these aero defense companies who have been reverse engineering it, and we've been utilizing it, and it hasn't gone through congressional oversight, and the public don't know. There's that one, and now they're trying their best to scramble and keep it under. And obviously, that is a form of power to keep that under wraps because it's the worst. It's a secret, and if it comes out, it's criminal activity. There's also that point you've made, and I think it's been alluded quite a lot where this topic they're keeping it hidden from the public because it will scare the public in terms of the capabilities of these beings and why they're visiting us. And I've read Lou Elizondo's book recently, Imminent, and he mentioned in there, I can't remember who he spoke to, but and this is mentioned quite a few times as well, but he mentioned somewhere how these are demons or there's a demon type element to this as well. And this was someone higher up who said this to him, I believe. So there is that talk of it as well. We don't know. Maybe this whole thing, everyone's driving disclosure. We be careful what we wish for. And we're trying to get the information out. Maybe they're hiding this because on good authority, they don't want to scare us. I don't personally believe that. I think it's more about them hiding the information. But I think there could be an element of it where it could literally transform everyone's lives if they're finding out the reason. Because the abduction case itself, I mean, for me, that is the most negative thing about it. You're taken without consent. You're probed. They're taking body parts out. If you hear all the stories, people are getting pregnant. They're having nightmares about it, and the whole experience itself is never joyful. Right, you're like locked onto a bed and you're taken out of your sleep, and it's all these moments when you're in a hypnagogic state as well. So it's all very strange and hushness under that. But yeah, it could be the reason why they're hiding it is they know more about, and I do believe they do know more about it. Whether they're in contact with these beings and that sort of stuff, I don't know. It's impossible for me to know, or for anyone to know apart from these guys there. But yeah, there could be a very sinister thing to it, and based on their behaviors,
Yeah.
what they've been doing.
Yeah. Wouldn't you would also think, wouldn't you, that let's say that the Roswell crash did happen. We can't prove it, but I'm under the impression it did happen because they actually announced it.
Yeah.
And you have people publishing books called Roswell the Truth. Basically, it didn't happen. It's only the truth based on their own narrative. No one's going to know. No one's going to know. They don't have any truth at all. It's all covered up, and they've done it. You have to give it to them. You have to congratulate them.
They did well. They've done really well.
Wonderfully.
Yeah.
I mean, most of the people involved in that are dead. Sadly, they passed. But the point is that if that did crash, why wasn't there any assistance from their fellow kind? You would think, wouldn't you, that if you were an explorer traveling to a primitive world and you crashed, you would have backup, or you would certainly send an SOS out. They didn't. This is my idea of a Trojan horse I published in about 5 years ago in the Digital Demon. But of course, that went against me in the end, because why would they do that? When the Roswell spaceship crashed in 1947, we'd just come out of a huge war. Why on earth would they be supplying the Americans or any
Mm.
kind of nation with high tech to increase the potential of those weapons if they could decipher it? It didn't make any sense. So they had no backup, they had no help. If they were planted, why? Was it just a genuine crash? But if it was, why didn't they have backup to retrieve them? It's
It's true.
very, very strange. You're going down, and it's like this opens up a whole network of questions. And the deeper you dig, the filthier it gets, the harder and filthier it gets, because you just can't reach any kind of conclusion. Now, the congressional hearing stating that Grush, that he's heard this from top officials about them having these bodies of the pilots in cryogenic freeze. I'd imagine that have the Rolls-Royce treatment, being deceased,
Yeah.
along with their ships. I do believe it. I think there's something to it. They have some. I think they have some. They must have some in storage. But of course, like anything precious, you're going to keep guarded. You're not going to tell anyone. And what makes me laugh about that disclosure, or they're attempting, you can't knock the people for trying. It's not the senator not to blame for it. They're trying to unlock the doors.
Mhm.
It has to go through a number of scenarios for them to reach this point of. But by that time, they would have moved everything.
Yeah, that's true.
They would move the pilots, they would move the debris away, and it's again, we're back to square one.
Mm.
So I would love to, those ships, if they were derelict crafts and the fossilized pilots or the dead pilots, love to see what they look like, because I don't think they are what people suspect them
Yeah,
to have
yeah.
been.
He said different morphologies in, I think, his testimony as
Yes.
well, which is an interesting word to use. I mean, what does that even mean?
Could they have been engineered, if they're so advanced that they
Mm.
would build these things from organic, cybernetic, that's the word, cybernetic pilots? Why would they need to send any of their own crew when they're so advanced? It doesn't make any sense. It's like the people, when they refer to the past, to the Anunnaki, the giants that were here, that they bred us as slaves. Well, that doesn't make any sense. You have to clothe, feed us, make sure we're comfortable. They would build just robots. They're so
Yeah,
advanced, it doesn't make any sense at all.
that's
Do you see
true.
what I mean? So these pointers we raise, I mean, I might be wrong, but they strongly swayed more towards the logical of what they would do. They wouldn't need slaves; they could build them.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, like everything is theories. Everyone's allowed to speculate on this because no one knows the answer, as we said before. So, what
Mm.
you're saying, it could be right, but it can also be wrong. But no one knows the answer, so therefore, you're allowed to speculate on this and come up with your own theories and stuff. And what you're mentioning is right. And they've actually thought of it. It's true though, because I remember reading the Zachariah Stitchin books as well around that and how they populated and we were all slaves and that thing. And it's true. They could have just created their own robotic workforce as opposed to bringing, like humans or creating a human type thing as well. So that could be a thing as well. But with the disclosure stuff, yeah, I mean, we don't know, right? I mean, there's been people a lot longer in this as well, and I feel like I'm still quite young in the game of this, and
Same here.
I feel I've got a lot more hope with it, but that's just the way. Maybe it's hopium, as we like to call it, or copium. I don't know, but we'll see how things go. There's meant to be a hearing this month, apparently. Jay Stratton, who led up worked with Lou and all these guys as well. So we'll see how things go. But I think ultimately the perception is changing. But then we'll see how the public take it, especially because, as you mentioned, there's some stuff that is not going, which is not so it's not welcomed as well.
There's also the point that's very interesting, that if they were good, let's say there is a race that are wonderful, they're good, and they are going to come to help us. Do we really think that the governments will allow them to give us free energy, clean
Absolutely
water,
not.
unlimited food, the profits? You see
And that's
what
why
they
I think
do.
they're hiding it as well. I think that's part of the reason why they could be hiding it as well. It will destroy the oil industry. It's finished completely. And we know money rules things in this world, unfortunately.
Yeah, but the thing is that they would arrive to intervene. If it reached that point, they would stop them. It reminds me of that Arthur C. Clarke's wonderful book called Childhood's End.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
I've read the book 3 times and I've seen the miniseries. I loved it. Basically, they arrive all over the world like Independence Day, but these are nice. Only they can't show themselves. They can't
Mm.
reveal what they look like. There's a good reason why. But they put the world to right. There's protests, there's anger, but they do it cleverly. So they get the world to rights. And when the people finally see them, they look like the devil. You see, this is this is the whole point of I wouldn't care what they look like if they could sort this world out. I don't care. I'd cozy up to Corellan. That was his name, the supervisor. I'd cozy up to him. He could slow time down and do everything, But they were wonderful. Yes, there was a price to pay at the end. There was a price to
Yeah.
pay. It was, I think, but the point is they came to intervene and they came to help mankind, to give us an uplifting. People didn't have to work anymore. You really think that they're the powers that be are going to allow that? So yes, there is that as well. It could be that they're guarding it because these things are good. We have to look at it, because I'm not going to knock that, because they could be good and they might have technology that could help us, and they're not going to have it. So only a select few will contain this. It's precious. It's very rare. But how long can they keep it quiet for? I mean.
Yeah. I
Mm.
mean, I'm actually I never actually watched the Star Trek one with Jean-Luc Picard,
Oh.
because so I'm watching it now. I'm on season 4. I absolutely love the show. It's so good. But I mean, what I keep hearing is about the Prime Directive, right, where they can't intervene because they need to let these planetary organizations grow on their own and make their own mistakes as well. There could be something attached to that as well, which you've already said, which could be. But then you're like, if we're about to blow ourselves up or we're about to do something. I mean, there has been instances apparently when they've got involved with our nuclear weapons and they've turned off.
Very limited.
Yeah, it's limited. You're right. It has been limited. Well, from what we know, and I think that's hopefully going to be, because right now there's not enough information, so we're struggling to kind of put this together, and it's a massive jigsaw and there's pieces everywhere, and we're trying to piece things together, and hopefully disclosure or whatever that looks like. I think disclosure is basically information to find out what they potentially know, so then we can understand as well. And obviously, if it's a bad force or a good force, or maybe there's in between, maybe they're just doing what they're doing because they think that's the way things should be done, and they're not good or bad. That could be something to look at as well. I think it is in our right to know, because of me personally, I think the technology, as you said, is game changing, and that's why I think that. But then again, just kind of touched on that as well. If they were to come and do this, I think we're slowly getting to that point now when we're starting to understand there is a chance of free energy and there's a way for us to do that. So maybe now's the right time, if there ever was going to be some sort of deliverance of that, for us to be shared. But I just don't trust our governments, and I don't trust the UK government. I don't trust the US government. I don't trust any sort of government, because they're known for disinformation. They're known for hiding things and keep them under wraps, and they put it under any type of act or legislation. It doesn't matter. We've seen it in the UK when Boris was partying during COVID. We made everyone wear masks, and we've seen it untold times in the US market as well. So whatever they say, I just hope that if disclosure happens or whatever happens with this as well, what I think it will do, and this is going away from your book as well, apologies, but it's important to know that it will demand a new leadership change, because no one's going to believe their governments anymore. How can they? It's going to demand a brand new way of looking at things, because those select people obviously don't have the right mentality if they've been hiding stuff back. And from that perspective, it's going to demand a new leadership. And that's why, for me, I think it's really important to get this out, because I can't think of anything else which can change the world as much as the biggest secret ever.
Yeah.
Right, that's the only thing that's going to actually change things, because right now we're just going around in circles. That's all we're doing, and things are getting progressively worse as we're getting advancing technology, but then we're making higher, faster, more capable weapons. It's not looking good. It's not looking good.
Yeah, it's I would welcome. I pray that one day we will wake up and they will be here. The first things they have to do, the first, is dissolve all government. That is the whole world. Dissolve the administrations, dissolve them, because they are causing this to go around like a wheel. It's greed and power. And I abhor it. It's strange, isn't it? When I was younger, or all of us, when we're at school, you're taught to not lie. You're taught to be a good citizen. You pay your taxes, and the very people who we are under do the absolute opposite. They have the gall to call themselves our leaders or administration. They should be totally ashamed of themselves, totally. And all this nonsense in Congress, it's a
Mm,
total sham
mm,
because of the coveting. And this causes problems because people raise eyebrows. Why are they covering it? And then the media, they now have used wonderfully, they've utilized the internet as a wonderful weapon now of propaganda. They're using it all the time. I'll give you an example, a simple example. They have refused to pay out for the pensioners, their allowance.
yeah.
And on the internet, greedy pensioners, they call them greedy pensioners, may not, yeah, you see how they twist everything. Their
Disgusting.
psychological weapons are weakening. I do feel that they're weakening. And when they weaken, they get more angry. And when they get angrier, they become more blatant. So
Yeah.
they're blatantly revealing their own true intentions and faces. This cannot go on. I have pleaded and begged that if there is a good race out there, and I dare say there might well be, I
Mm,
would imagine there would be.
mm,
Wiser, at least. The first thing they need to do is don't even listen to the administration, because all they'll do is use their technology to gain for weaponry. We have to dissolve all weapons. This is what causes hatred. Yes, we
yeah.
need it for defense, but every empire that raises, you just said it yourself, Laszlo, they reach a point of technological superiority, then they turn to dust. Does
Yeah.
it surprise you? Because of what it reaches a pinnacle, a point, and then it's abolished because of greed, arrogance, and supreme, um, this supreme kind of like, I've got more weapons than you. Let's fight.
It's
All
like
the
postcode wars. It's so stupid. It's
mm,
so childish to be that. But
mm,
that this is this is
mm.
why this whole phenomenon for me, it represents a lot more than um just a UFO thing. And it goes back to that point before when you're like, is it part of the same area? And it could just be a form of higher intelligence that comes down and perceives itself in a particular way. Literally just a higher form of intelligence, and it manifests its different ways into it as well. But it does um and maybe because of the way the earth is and the way people are and that sort of stuff, maybe they're like, well, they're negative. We're known for us as well, and we've all got, as human beings, we've all got a capacity for this as well. I've got the capacity to be evil. You do. We all do. It's part of our
Yeah.
nature, right? There's no thing. So maybe that's their way of kind of coming down and playing our game as well, right? You want to play dark and you want to focus and be this way, then we can also occur to you that way. We can also perceive our way.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good point. Yes, that
yeah,
is a good point. But we certainly aren't. I mean, you're right. We could murder. You could kill someone with a handkerchief. I mean,
yeah.
you could drown in a. You could drown in a
Handkerchief.
cup of tea. But the
Don't
thing
get
is that we know the morals. They
yeah,
would.
yeah,
Them. They would know upstairs. They would know, if they know us so well, they would understand our fears, tribulations. They would understand what we love, but they still appear at the foot of your bed, 3 o'clock in the mornings, where you're stark naked and unattended. They appear to terrify you. Now they are stupid, or just downright. What's the word I could use?
intrusive.
Yes, it's right. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. But the good thing is we are making progress. We
Yeah.
have made progress. I think that on the whole, I think all the researchers are doing wonderful, the good researchers,
Mm,
because they are looking at it, they're developing a pattern. We are developing a pattern. And it's like many pieces of jigsaws on a board, and you're slowly putting pieces together. And a lot of it don't make sense, but it does in other ways. The deception in that. Why is this happening? And now you can hone in on that and
yeah.
think, "Oh, why do you appear as that?" It's funny, isn't it? I mentioned this in Illusions. The fact that I noticed that the greys are embryonic. They appear embryonic, perhaps for a reason, for this fabled or this genuine hybridization program. They're illustrating exactly what they intend.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
werewolf itself is primal, and Bigfoot, they're primal. So in the forests, they appear in the forests, they're primal. The
Mm,
reptilians are of suburbia and also the wilderness. They're more military. So it's as if everything has the fairies cast the spells, very
mm,
magical. You know, you have the trolls that have been reported as well, although I call the greys the trolls.
How big they are.
But they all have the physical get up kind of loosely illustrates their program, so to
Hmm.
speak.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I noticed that, perhaps we are dealing with something it can define itself to a degree. It can define itself to a degree, to illustrate exactly what it intends to do or what it purports to do.
Yeah. Absolutely. And the negative side of it is something that has to be acknowledged, and I think that's kind of the language right now that is used with the current disclosure movement, is trying to find out. Well, they send this to the matter of national security, and it is because we don't know who they are, what they're doing, why they abduct us. We don't know. We don't know that information, and that I think the reason it's being used, and I think why, because it's the cost of inaction, right? It's a marketing thing where it's like you can focus on the return of investment, right? But if you focus on the cost and the issue of it, that creates more. It's a stronger narrative. It creates more support from the public, and it gets Congress and other people involved. And something like you're mentioning as well, it could be one sentence of your book or a page of your book. It could open up something and help that individual as well, because they may be delving into the phenomena and going down the dark path with not even realizing it. They don't even know, right? They don't even know.
I think there's good to it as well, because
Yeah.
I don't know if I told you this. I had published it in the first book, the Digital Demon, where I had foresight,
Mm.
because I contest time travel, but it slapped me in the face because I'm seeing pieces of the future. I have them waking, and the
Wow.
small incidents occurred. They occurred. It happened. They happened. They
Wow.
happened just as I've seen them. So one of them was called the Vision. And this is when Philip and I are 72. It sounds ridiculous, but I'm going to just put it out there. I'm going to throw it
Go
out
on then.
there, right? What they showed me was that I know we're 72, and we're going along this country road, and we notice that a wooded coppice is completely grey. There's a mist. It's contrived. This mist is contrived. I know it's contrived by something else. It's camouflaging it. We have to go into this. It's all grey. It's a grey day, right? So we get out the car. We go into the centre of this coppice, and it's clear. Like being in the eye of a hurricane, the mist is clear. And above me, I see a huge triangular ship. And floating down from it are two of what we call the greys. They're floating down. Now, they are going to land comfortably away from us, right? They're going to land comfortably away, which would make absolute sense. You feel a little bit more, I know it's unnerving, a little bit more comfortable with distance.
Yeah.
So, and then it ended. The vision ended. This is after I had a successive number of future events, which I've seen. Everything I do is slaps me back in the face because I contested time travel, but I've been slapped in the face with it. This is when we're 72. If this happens, so evidently they want us fully clothed.
That's a good start.
We're conscious. So whatever this meeting, if this is to be, and the grey is the greys, the grey day, the greys. It's after I put it all together. So evidently they wish to tell us something or something important. Something important. I think there's going to be communication if this does happen. And I want to hear it from them. I'm going to
Mm.
hear it because they know I don't have any nonsense. And I'll tell you this now. I'll trust them more than I would my own damn government.
Yeah. Yeah.
Whatever they're going to tell me, if they disclose, and I think this is what it's to be, because it must be evidently very important to actually have a conscious visit, as I said, fully clothed and in command of your faculties for them to actually land to tell us something. So
Of course.
evidently they're going to tell us something very important. And I would certainly trust them more than my own government. So I
Yeah.
think that was positive. That was a positive. I felt that there was something important, that these things, if they are the genuine ones, or if they are them, I don't know. As I said, I don't know, but they're going to tell us something.
So wait, that's really interesting. So this was a vision that you had,
Mm.
and you saw it in front of you, kind of playing out, right? And
Yeah.
you were 72 years old.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. No,
Yes.
I believe I've had my own premonitions and stuff as well before that have come true. So I completely get that as well. But that's very interesting as well. Then maybe, do you know what, for your own sake as well. Sometimes the way it is. You get the roller coaster. It's like positive dip, positive dip,
Yeah.
positive.
Yeah.
This
Yeah.
is. I'm not putting words in your mouth or anything like
Yin
that.
and yang.
But you know how it is, right? You think you know something, and then you're like, actually, no, I don't know it, or I think that's bad, and then something that bad turns out to be good. It's so strange. That's why I think for this whole phenomenon itself, you just have to be a stone in the river, as they say, right? You just let it flow past you, the currents. You try and stay as sturdy as possible and try not to get dragged off.
Yeah, it's fascinating, and it doesn't knock you. You know, you're going to have this. You're going to have all the confusion and that, but you just have to try and sift yourself, each one and every one of us, to believe what you believe. Don't let me or anyone else tell you what to believe. Believe what you feel is right. You know, just take your own journey through it. I mean, I'm none the wiser. There is something here with us, most definitely. They are real. They're real, and it is off-world. It's off-world. It's not. It's not all. Let's just say it's not natural. It's not part of our realm, but certainly I have a feeling if this is to pan out, and it's interesting how I had the sequence of events first of seeing this when I contested time travel. I contested it. I'm slapped in the face because I'm seeing elements which did happen. I spoke to a chap in New York. I'll give you an example. Before I saw this vision, and I was at work with Philip at work. This was years ago, and I saw the vision with the Greys. This meeting, but I was with a chap before this happened. William, I was talking to him in New York, and he's a lovely chap. It's for a radio station. We don't do it anymore, but couldn't see him. It was a fantastic line in New York, and I kept seeing, this is how it happens, this sand, all this sand. I nearly passed it up. I nearly passed the sand up. I said, William, I stopped him. I said, I'm sorry, I've got to tell you this. I'm seeing all this sand. It was so strong. Does it mean anything to you? No. Okay, fine. Monday morning, this is a Sunday, Monday morning, I come home from work. He sends me photographs, miles of sand. He's worked with it, never worked with it in his life. I've just seen the future. So then 2 or 3 others happened, and then the big one. After when they were confirmed, but this can't be confirmed because it was 72. So this meeting, if it is to happen, if it is as it is, then we are to meet them, albeit covertly. And of course, we'll say, oh, yeah, you could just come out and say you've met them. I'm not going to do that. I tell you why. I tell the truth. I'm honest. I'm absolutely honest.
No,
I wouldn't
you are.
lie to anyone.
No, exactly, and I can attest for that as well. There's no bullshit as well. There's no motivation behind it. Like, why do you really think, guys? Anyone watching this? Do you really think we believe in aliens because we want to make money and do those things? We get ridiculed for it.
We don't make much money, and you do get ridiculed for it. I've lost my reputation with a lot of people. I'm terrified at work where I work, them finding out that I'm looking into it because they will think they'll think you're a geek and you know, just keep sucking on that oxygen and they'll go back to their own planet.
But I'm interviewing now, right, for companies, and they're like, "What do you do in your spare time?" I'm like, "Play football, watch football, you know, like that sort of stuff." I won't be like, "By the way, I believe in extraterrestrial visitation, and then I've been visited before, and I've been abducted." They'll be like, "Yeah, get the fuck out, mate. You're nuts." It's not. So no, I completely get it. So listen, look, I'm just conscious of time. We could probably talk for a few more hours, but look, I just look, it's been really nice speaking with you. I just wanted to finish up by just get from yourself. Where can we find you? Where can we get your book from? Obviously, I'll include all the links in the description and all that stuff. But
well, the Digital Demon, the first one, and Illusions can be obtained from Amazon because the publishers won't touch it. I've been published by companies before. Capital Band, they did Twin Swords, which is a paranormal book, but they've gone out of print. It's finished. The company's dissolved. But the Digital Demon and Illusions can be obtained from Amazon, published by the wonderful Philip Mantle's Flying Disc Press. It's a Kindle, paperback, hardback, and the audio, the new one. Now I like him. He's American and he's got a kind of tongue-in-cheek voice, so he's wonderful. So he speaks with a kind of tongue-in-cheek voice. So the Illusions. Yeah, I like him. Cool. He's good. Michael, I think something. I can't remember his name. But wonderful narrator. Yeah.
Great. Okay. Super. I think you should do your own narration as well. We need that'll be one day. That'll be your next project. Super. All right. Well, listen, guys. Everyone, do check out Ron's books and stuff. As I said, everything will be in the description. And listen. Thank you once again for coming on. Appreciate it. And let's catch up soon. Okay.
Thank you, Laszlo. Thank you very much.
Cheers, mate. Speak to you later. Bye.